半岛电视台主持人史蒂夫·克莱蒙斯以犀利提问闻名，他这次把火力对准了中国学者高志凯。开场第一个问题就毫不留情：中国预计什么时候对台湾发起进攻？紧接着又隐晦表达中日冲突、中美开战的可能性。几乎每一个问题都在试探中国的底线。但高志凯不仅没有被带节奏，反而全部一一化解，甚至讲到后面开始反客为主，直接喊话美国人不要忘记珍珠港，不要纵容日本走军国主义老路，让我们走进这场极具西方风格的访谈。
Chinese media has often said Taiwan's return to China is an important part of the post-war international order. When does the invasion begin?
Well, I don't think there will be invasion. First of all,
how about a blockade?
First of all, the exact status of the relations across the two sides of the Taiwan Strait is well dictated by what's in the Cairo Declaration and the Potsdam Proclamation, which became the pillars upon which the international war after defeating Nazi Germany and imperialist Japan.
Do you think everyone remembers
founded.
that origin story?
Well, if anyone forgets, I want to bring them back into historical knowledge about the two pillars of the post-war international order, because these two monumental documents dictated that Japan, which was occupying Taiwan since 1895, should return Taiwan to China, which it did after it unconditionally surrendered. Ever since then, there has been only one China, and Taiwan being part of China. Of course, there have been separatists in Taiwan who want to push the edge of the envelope, but they will never succeed.
But back to your inevitability of peace, there is a little bit of turmoil about this. Sanai Takaichi, the Japanese prime minister, may not have that early memory, or there's been a real heating up, extraordinary heating up of Chinese-Japanese tensions, to the point where Xi Jinping asked to call on the hotline to President Donald Trump and talk to President Trump about this. So I'm interested in what you see happening. What do you think happened in that call?
I think a Wall Street Journal has the better version of what happened between President Trump and Prime Minister Takaichi. But now you mentioned Prime Minister Takaichi. Allow me to mention some of my observations. I think it is the first time for a sitting Prime Minister of Japan since Japan unconditionally surrendered in 1945 to threaten war against another country. And in this case, she threatened war against China. So you need to understand the historical context in which she made that contact. I think Prime Minister Takaichi represents a particular group of people in Japan who want to turn the table on the verdicts of the Japanese unconditional surrender. Japan unconditionally surrendered in 1945 to the United States, to China, to Soviet Union, which joined the war against Japan in the last minute, and against Great Britain. No one should ever allow Japan to turn the table on the verdict, which was carved in stone about its unconditional surrender. And I want to tell everyone in the United States, remember Pearl Harbor. Don't forget Pearl Harbor. Don't forget the atrocities the Japanese imperialists and fascists committed against the American people, the American soldiers, officers, as well as soldiers, for example, and the 35 million people they killed in China alone. So I think China and the United States, despite of all our differences, should unite in one thing: never allow Japan to become militaristic or fascist again, because you never know what they will be up to once they regain some kind of military superiority.
So Xi Jinping called President Trump called Prime Minister Takaichi. Is the problem solved?
I hope so. But you never underestimate what the American neo-fascists may cook up with. I think there are several things very, very dangerous. And I hope the Americans and the Chinese people will unite in doing this. Now, they are talking about building hundreds of nuclear weapons, which will be absolutely not allowed. And they are talking about weaponizing outer space, because they say if we have prohibitions on militarization on the surface of the earth or in the waters, then we can weaponize outer space. No, China and the United States should never allow Japan to weaponize the space. They want to destroy communication satellites. in case of emergencies, for example. I think China and the United States, based on our collective experience of joining hands in hands, fighting shoulder to shoulder, back to back, against the Japanese imperialists, should never allow remilitarization of Japan and should never allow Japan to destroy the ironclad verdict of Japan's unconditional surrender. And hopefully we should really make sure that Japan will remain as a pacifist country, devoted to peace and never threaten war against any other country in the world.
Let me change gears here and ask you about some foreign policy and national security issues. So in Washington, the national security strategy of the Trump administration was released as a report. China is mentioned 21 times in that document. Europe is mentioned a lot more as a concern point. And I was surprised, to be honest, given the level of hyperventilation in America about China, the China challenge, and what people call the defining challenge for the United States in this era is China, but how level-headed the tone was with China, that it was not the end of the world, that they were not wrapped up believing that a war with China would ensue in 2027 over Taiwan. So I'm just interested in your take on how you read the national security strategy document, and were you as surprised as I was?
No, not at all. I have the English version as well as the Chinese version of the national strategy.
Are they similar?
I think comparing the two versions, they are very close to each other.
Okay.
I think President Trump and his government made the right decision and probably has reached a point where it realizes that it does not have infinite resources to continue to practice overreach. And eventually you need to pull back.
You see overreach as encircling China, as, a string of pearls, right? Containing China?
Overreaching in many senses of the word, for example, try to police the whole world, try to launch one war after another to achieve its strategic goal, which eventually is not sustainable by any stretch of the imagination, and try to be more realistic and pragmatic, and also try to, for example, defend free trade, defend peace rather than using war as the first priority, should probably better serve the fundamental interest of the American people. Now, between China and the United States, I firmly believe in what I call the inevitability of peace between China and the United States, which is a kind of
the inevitability of peace.
Inevitability of peace between China and the United States, meaning whether you like it or not, whether you like China or hate China, or dislike China, you cannot use war to achieve your goal. Eventually, you need to come to terms with China as a megatrend and solve whatever problems there are, which are plenty, in peaceful means, through diplomacy, negotiation, for example, to avoid war rather than embracing war. Because I think the inevitability of peace is kind of a rebuke of the destined for war scenario. But if you want to apply the theory derived therefrom to China and the United States, two very large nuclear power states, something must be wrong. So I came up with this inevitability of peace theory, because I truly believe war should be absolutely avoided between China and the United States, because if you instigate a war between China and the United States, in conventional war terms, it will soon get out of control and escalate from conventional war into non-conventional war. And that probably will spell the doom for mankind. And it will be Armageddon in a sense. So I talk about inevitability of peace to anyone who has an ear.
Later.
看完这场对话，我来说说有意思的地方。这场访谈中的两个人物，克莱蒙斯与高志凯，其实代表了当下国际舆论场里两种非常典型及鲜明的思维方式。克莱蒙斯代表的是一种典型的西方问题意识，一旦谈及中国，尤其一谈到台湾，默认前提往往就是冲突会不会爆发，封锁会不会开始，战争是不是已经不可避免。换句话说，很多西方讨论中国的方式，已经习惯了先把问题放进地缘对抗和危机升级的框架里，再去寻找答案。这种提问方式看似很中立，其实本身就带着很强的预设，仿佛台海一定会走向某种军事摊牌，仿佛中美关系的最终归宿只能是对抗。而高志凯这边则明显是另一套逻辑， 他没有顺着这个框架去承认战争的必然性，而是不断把问题拉回历史、法理和战后秩序本身，强调台湾问题首先不是一个可以任意炒作的热点冲突，而是有一个明确国际文件、有明确历史归属的问题。同时，他也把日本重新拉回到讨论中心，提醒外界不要只盯着中国，而忽略了日本国内一些危险思潮可能对地区局势造成的真正破坏。从表达风格上说，克莱蒙斯更像是在用西方熟悉的话语体系，把中国最敏感的问题拆开来多次反复试探，而高志凯则是在用一种非常典型的东方立场，或者更准确地说是中国立场去回应，不接受西方设定的问题框架，不承认中美必有一战这种叙事，也不允许日本在战后秩序问题上模糊历史、试探底线。我个人认为这场访谈的价值就在这里，它不是简单的一个问一个答，而更像是两种国际叙事方式的正面碰撞，一边是西方长期主导的危机叙事、冲突叙事，一边是中国不断强调的历史叙事、法理叙事和和平叙事。你可以不同意高志凯的某些表达方式，也可以对他的某些判断保留意见，但你不能否认，他至少把一个很关键的问题重新摆到了台面上。如果今天所有人都只关心会不会打，却没人认真回到为什么会走到这一步，谁在不断制造紧张，战后秩序到底还能不能被尊重，那讨论本身就已经被带偏了。所以看完这场对话，我最大的感受就是，克莱蒙斯代表的是西方对中国的惯性审视，而高志凯代表的则是中国越来越不愿意再被别人定义议题、设定问题、主导叙事。未来世界我们一定会越来越频繁看到这种间接碰撞。当西方还在用旧时代的对抗思维思考问题的时候，却总是不自知中国早已走在了前面。我们有自己的想法做法，我们不需要你们西方教我们做事，我们拥有这样自信的原因就是已经比你们强。最后，至于谁的思路更符合这个时代，我想时间会给出答案。好了，今天的视频就到这里。如果你觉得这期内容有价值，请点赞、转发、订阅，我们下期再见。